Imagine for a second that you are sitting at the absolute pinnacle of your career. You've spent decades accumulating all the technical know-how in the world. You
Mm.
know the systems, you know the fluid dynamics, you know the exact operational protocols for your facility. But then,
A massive crisis hits.
exactly, a massive, unprecedented crisis hits.
Ah.
Physical alarms are blaring, stakeholders are panicking, the press is on line one demanding answers, and your board of directors is on line two demanding immediate action.
It's a nightmare scenario.
It really is. You have
Yeah.
to manage all these different people and competing interests simultaneously. And suddenly, despite all your brilliant, specialized technical knowledge, your communication completely falls apart. You freeze.
Yeah.
And the crisis just deepens. It's terrifying. And it's the exact problem we're exploring in today's deep dive. I'm your host, and together with our resident expert, we are unpacking a fascinating internal script.
A very recent one, too.
Yeah, dated March 2026, straight from EON AI Ventures. It details their brand new EON Bar Brainy multi-avatar soft skills platform. Our mission today is to figure out how cutting-edge immersive tech is trying to solve a massive impending crisis in high-stakes industries, places where just having the technical answer isn't enough anymore.
No, it's not. And it really is the ultimate bottleneck in any high-stakes operational environment. Because the true challenge for these enterprise organizations isn't just teaching people the procedural steps of what to do when a critical system fails.
Right, the manuals already exist for that.
Exactly. The engineering schematics are there. The real challenge is teaching them how to act when millions of dollars or, potentially human lives are on the line. Human behavior under extreme pressure is the great wild card.
Because when cognitive load spikes,
Executive function drops. It's basic neurology. And this internal document from EON outlines a really highly analytical approach to taming that wild card. They were trying to build a bridge between technical fluency and crisis communication.
and we're not just talking about some hypothetical down-the-road problem here. The source material drops a staggering statistic right out of the gate.
Yeah, the demographic cliff.
The demographic cliff, exactly. In heavy high-stakes industries, they specifically point to sectors like oil and gas. They are projecting that 50% of their experts are retiring within the next 5 to 7 years.
Half the workforce.
Half of the most experienced workforce just packing up their desks and leaving. If you think about it like a championship sports team, it's the equivalent of losing your entire coaching staff and all your veteran players the night before the finals. The sheer volume of institutional knowledge, especially that unwritten muscle memory of how to handle a crisis, it's just about to evaporate.
It is. And naturally, the immediate assumption across the corporate sector is that, well, automation and artificial intelligence will just step in to fill the void.
Right? AI will save us.
That's the narrative. But if we look at the operational math broken down in the EON N document, we see the inherent flaw in relying purely on that. They note that generic AI and automated systems might successfully fill about 80% of that expertise gap.
Which sounds pretty good on paper.
For a consumer software company or a logistics firm, yeah, 80% might be an acceptable passing grade. But in these specific high-stakes environments, like managing a volatile energy grid or a high-pressure pipeline, 80% is a catastrophic failure rate.
You can't operate a pipeline that's 80% safe.
You really can't. The margin for error in these sectors is essentially zero, which means they require 100% competency from the humans in the loop.
Okay, let's unpack this. If generic AI can only get an operation 80% of the way there, how exactly does EON plan to cover that remaining critical 20%? Because that final 20% delta seems to be where all the existential risk lives.
That's the core of it. Because if the AI handles the routine stuff, the human is left handling only the most complex, unpredictable edge cases. And that brings us to the core operational philosophy outlined in the text. EON is consciously positioning this new platform as what they call the acceleration layer between AI capability and workforce readiness.
The acceleration layer.
Yeah. They are making a very specific distinction here. The AI does not replace the human worker in these critical edge cases. Instead, the AI accelerates the worker's ability to reach that required 100% competency.
Got it.
It functions as a cognitive bridge. It takes the raw computational processing power of AI and uses it to rapidly forge the complex, nuanced, soft skills that a human being actually needs when the environment turns chaotic.
Which leads perfectly into the architectural upgrades they're rolling out in the EON and Reality Soft Skills Platform version 2.0. The document emphasizes a massive pivot away from traditional abstract dialogue training.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, we are moving entirely past the era of just clicking through multiple choice dialogue trees on a flat screen. Version 2.0 introduces a heavily engineered structural change to how the training is delivered.
What's fascinating here is the introduction of deep visual context as the primary driver of the simulation. This is a huge pedagogical shift. They're moving soft skills training from a purely verbal, abstract exercise into a deeply immersive, visually grounded reality.
Visual grounding.
Yes, the underlying cognitive science here is crucial because in the real world, human beings do not negotiate crises in a sensory vacuum. Now, they are forcing the learner to communicate while actively processing the visual stimuli of the crisis itself.
And the document details this through what they call their split panel architecture. On one side of the user experience, you are interacting with dynamic avatars, and the source highlights that these feature highly realistic lip-syncing, fluid procedural gestures, and nuanced emotional expressions.
So you really have to read the room.
Exactly. The learner is forced to read micro-expressions and body language, but simultaneously, on the other side of this split panel, you have the contextual world panel, which renders the actual physical setting of the operational scenario.
Which completely alters the cognitive load placed on the learner. It's an entirely different neurological task to calmly de-escalate an avatar when you're in a sterile, quiet training room, versus attempting that exact same de-escalation while the environment around you is actively degrading.
It's demanding your technical attention at the same time.
Right.
Let's ground this with the example from the source material and put you, the listener, right into the shoes of someone using this platform. Imagine you're dealing with a critical pipeline incident.
High stakes.
Very. So instead of just talking to a simulated executive on a blank screen, you are actively monitoring a visualization of the pipeline operations center. You see a simulated control board. You see the telemetry data shifting in real time. You have this visual grounding that forces your brain to connect the hard, technical realities of dropping pressure gauges with the soft skills required to manage the panicked stakeholder you're actually speaking to. It bridges the gap between engineering reality and human reaction.
And that visual grounding is precisely why they term this an acceleration layer. In the field, technical data and human emotion crash into each other at the exact same time.
Yeah.
By simulating that dual-task constraint, the platform forces the learner to synthesize information exactly the way they will have to in a live operations center. But to make that illusion hold up, to prevent the simulation from feeling disjointed, the tech driving the two panels has to be incredibly sophisticated.
I was looking at the technical requirements for this, and the synchronization demands are just intense. Because if the telemetry data on the control board doesn't perfectly sync up with what the avatar is reacting to,
The psychological immersion shatters immediately.
instantly, the brain recognizes the latency and just stops treating the scenario as a genuine threat. It becomes a game.
That is the primary engineering hurdle. And to solve it, the document details a synchronized architecture built around something called the World Avatar Event Bus.
The event bus.
Yeah. Think of an event bus as the central nervous system of the simulation environment. It facilitates bidirectional, real-time communication between the immersive 3D visual world and the generative AI driving the conversational avatars.
So they aren't isolated.
Not at all. They aren't running on separate pre-rendered tracks. They are continuously exchanging data packets.
So applying that back to our pipeline example, if a physical alert suddenly flashes red on your visual panel indicating a valve failure, the avatars do not just blindly continue their previous conversational thread.
Right.
Because of this bidirectional event bus, the generative AI instantly registers that environmental trigger. The avatars react to that specific flashing light dynamically in real time.
Exactly.
The text notes their emotional expression might immediately shift to panic, or they will directly reference the new valve failure in their dialogue generation. The physical environment acts as a direct prompt for the avatar's behavioral AI.
Which means the simulation achieves a level of nonlinear complexity. The scenario is never going to unfold the exact same way twice.
You can't just game the system.
You can't. The learner cannot just memorize a dialogue script to pass the assessment. They have to remain entirely present, continually scanning both the technical instruments and the human reactions, and constantly adjusting their communication strategy on the fly based on live variables.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because from a purely instructional standpoint, dropping a trainee in front of a flashing control board and a screaming, dynamically generated avatar, that just sounds like a recipe for a massive panic attack.
Oh, absolutely.
If the goal is to lower cognitive overload, throwing them straight into the deep end seems counterproductive. How does a system like this prevent completely overwhelming the user before they actually learn anything?
That is a critical point of friction in any immersive training design, and it seems EON has addressed it through what they call the progressive immersion ladder. It's a very deliberate pedagogical structure. The platform is designed to scale dynamically. It matches the user's demonstrated capability before increasing the sensory input.
The source outlines the steps of this ladder really clearly. You start at the very bottom, which might just be a simple pre-rendered video to establish baseline operational concepts.
Right? Low stakes.
No live interaction. But as you prove your competency, you climb up. You graduate to a real-time, multi-avatar conversation. Once you establish baseline conversational control there, you step up into full 3D exploration of the operational environment.
Yeah.
And eventually, at the absolute top of the immersion ladder, the platform integrates augmented reality. The simulated environment and the avatars physically overlay onto your actual real-world workspace.
That's intense.
Yeah, it incrementally scales up the psychological pressure only as your processing skills improve.
And crucially, while the user is climbing that ladder and dealing with increasing pressure, they are not left entirely to their own devices. The platform incorporates a continuous support mechanism during the learning phase, which is perhaps one of the most analytically dense elements of the version 2.0 update.
They call it the real-time whisper coach.
Yes.
When a user is in training mode, they have this invisible AI-driven guide. As you're standing there, actively trying to calculate what to say to this panicked avatar while the control board data is fluctuating, the whisper coach provides real-time text-based suggestions right beneath the conversation interface. It nudges the user when they hesitate or begin to utilize ineffective communication strategies.
We do need to emphasize a crucial technical distinction the source makes regarding this feature, though. This is not a static prompt system pulling from a generic database of corporate de-escalation phrases.
Like saying, "I hear your frustration."
Right. It's not that. The whisper coach is explicitly described as being world-aware.
Meaning it's actively parsing the data from the contextual world panel as well. But doesn't a whisper coach just turn the employee into a parrot?
How do you mean?
If an algorithm is actively feeding them the exact optimal lines to say in real time, are they actually developing internal soft skills, or are they just learning how to read an AI-generated teleprompter really effectively?
That's a valid concern. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of how the system synthesizes data, it becomes clear that it's demanding much more than rote repetition.
Yeah.
The artificial intelligence driving the whisper coach understands the exact visual crisis unfolding on the telemetry screen.
Right.
And it continuously analyzes the historical log of every single action you have taken so far in that specific simulation. So if you're negotiating with a stakeholder who is aggressively objecting to shutting down the pipeline due to financial implications.
The coach doesn't just say, "Be empathetic."
Exactly. It dynamically synthesizes the live technical data, for example, the exact rate of pressure loss, with the stakeholder's specific AI personality profile to suggest highly tailored contextual responses.
Wow.
It's coaching the user on how to merge human psychology with the immediate technical facts. It models the ideal cognitive synthesis until the user can generate it independently.
It's attempting to codify the intuition of a master crisis negotiator, parsing every variable in the room and visualizing that intuition for the learner.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the training wheels have to come off. The simulation ends, the whisper coach goes silent, and the assessment begins. And that brings up a massive structural question. How does an enterprise organization actually quantify whether a learner succeeded?
That is the billion-dollar question.
Right, because if you're training someone on a physical machine, it's binary. Either the machine runs or it breaks. But human interaction is inherently subjective. How do you objectively measure soft skills in a way that satisfies a corporate boardroom?
Closing that analytical loop is where the vast majority of soft skills training programs fall apart, precisely because of that subjectivity. EON addresses this operational hurdle with their assessment engine. A major architectural addition in this version 2.0 is the explicit algorithmic scoring of a metric they define as situational awareness.
Which perfectly aligns with the split panel setup we discussed earlier. The assessment engine isn't just running sentiment analysis to grade whether the user maintained a calm tone of voice. It explicitly grades how well the user tied their spoken dialogue back to the visual context they were being shown on the world panel.
Exactly.
If the simulation triggered a visual cue, like the control board, showing a critical temperature spike, but the user failed to integrate that specific data point into their verbal negotiation with the avatar, their situational awareness score drops significantly.
Yep.
It is actively measuring their ability to synthesize the two halves of the split panel constraint.
By doing so, it mechanizes the subjectivity of human interaction into a quantifiable metric. And the feedback mechanism extends far beyond just handing the user a numerical score at the end of the session. The platform processes the simulation data to generate what they call a branching consequence visualization.
I spent a lot of time looking at how the source described this, and it's a fascinating approach to self-reflection. Once the scenario concludes, the engine outputs a complex visual diagram.
A huge tree of options.
Yeah, it maps out the entire conversational tree, showing the user not just the linear path they took, but rendering every alternative path they could have taken based on different dialogue choices. It lays out the direct simulated consequences of their specific decisions.
It's the butterfly effect.
Exactly. A user can look at this visual map and realize, oh, if I had explicitly acknowledged the stakeholder's safety concern at minute 3, instead of pivoting to the engineering data, the AI would have de-escalated and the entire crisis would have resolved 10 minutes sooner.
From an enterprise training perspective, that visualization is an incredibly powerful tool. Being able to visually map out the butterfly effect of your own communication style allows for rapid, targeted behavioral correction. It directly addresses the goal of lowering the time to competency.
Yeah, because organizations do not have to wait for an employee to make $1 million communication error in the real world to conduct a postmortem.
Right, they can see the exact algorithmic consequence of their conversational instincts mapped out in a safe environment today.
So, what does this all mean for the immediate future of high-stakes industries? We've detailed some incredibly complex technology here. Bidirectional event buses, minimizing latency, progressive immersion ladders, managing cognitive load, and world-aware whisper coaches synthesizing data.
That's a lot.
Is this purely theoretical architecture, or is this actually out there operating in the wild? How is this being deployed right now?
The internal document specifically highlights their first major real-world proof of concept, and it is a massive deployment. The platform is currently being utilized by ExxonMobil.
Wow. You literally cannot ask for a more complex, high-stakes testing ground than a multinational energy corporation.
Exactly. And importantly, they are not utilizing this platform for basic entry-level employee onboarding. ExxonMobil is deploying this specific architecture for executive-level, multi-stakeholder role-play focused entirely on crisis management.
The highest-level decision makers.
Yes. The top leadership within the corporation is actively practicing how to navigate real-world pipeline incidents inside this immersive simulation. They are utilizing the dynamic avatars, managing the contextual visual panels, and analyzing the branching consequences to stress test their communication instincts before a genuine disaster strikes.
When you step back and look at the trajectory we have covered today, it is quite profound. We started with the very real impending operational crisis of losing 50% of top industry experts, a massive brain drain that threatens the stability of critical infrastructure. And we've explored a highly engineered solution that leverages augmented reality, bidirectional event buses, and generative AI to perfectly simulate the crushing pressure of high-stakes human interaction.
It's literally an algorithmic bridge.
Yeah, being built to transfer the deep, intuitive knowledge an expert has accumulated over decades into the practical, actionable skills an entire workforce needs to execute when the physical alarms start ringing. It's an attempt to turn the abstract theory of crisis management into measurable muscle memory.
It represents a remarkable synthesis of high-level technical capability and behavioral psychology. But when we look critically at the sheer processing power of this technology, particularly the continuous behavioral modeling provided by the AI assistants, this raises an important question regarding long-term human adaptation.
Oh.
Let's hear it.
If these generative AI engines, like the Whisper Coach, become completely flawless at analyzing data and guiding executives through the most complex, high-stakes human crises, how will that eventually change our baseline expectations for human empathy and intuition?
That's a huge point.
If a corporate learner can practice every single branching consequence of a conversation with an algorithm, mapping out the perfectly optimized logical path to de-escalate another human being, will we eventually lose our ability to trust our own unfiltered human instincts in the real world?
Are we actually training ourselves to be highly empathetic communicators, or
Or are we simply learning how to perfectly execute an AI's optimized script for simulating human empathy?
That is a phenomenal and honestly somewhat unsettling thought to leave on. If the machine teaches us the mathematically perfect way to be human in a crisis, do we slowly forget how to do it without the machine's guidance?
it's the ultimate paradox?
That exact tension between technological optimization and human intuition is why we love uncovering these internal documents. It is certainly something for you to mull over the next time you're trying to navigate a tricky, high-pressure conversation in your own life. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the EON architecture. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep analyzing the data, and we will see you for the next deep dive.